It says live.
Okay.
It says live, and I think it usually takes a few seconds to appear, but it says live, so we're gonna go. Hello,
Okay.
everybody. Jan and I are here. We're doing a Soul Purpose conversation. This is episode 11, right, Jan? Something like that.
10. Did we do 10? Oh, 11. Yes, 11.
11, yeah. So we have been doing this Soul Purpose conversation to share what we are doing inside of the Soul Purpose School group that we have that has been growing rapidly. It's been a year. And we decided to go live on Facebook and LinkedIn and everywhere we can go so we can spread this conversation to share what we're doing inside of the Soul Purpose School group that you can find the link somewhere below or above. And we have monthly theme workshops. Last month we did Angelic Money. We're doing Belief Camp starting, when is it? The week of September 22nd. And we're going to be doing different challenges before that to warm up, but to really hone into understand the energetics and the mechanism of life. And I being on this student of life, understanding, exploring myself and the spiritual dimension and the idea of quantum physics and how to actually integrate the totality of who we are. I come from the belief that we are a spiritual being having this physical experience, and we're all here to cultivate our gift to touch the world. And we are now in the Soul Purpose group helping all soul-led entrepreneurs on a mission to awaken the world, grow their business from a spiritual perspective. And that's a mouthful sentence, but the integration of the spiritual realization and the expansion of their gift is what we are excited about helping people in the world. So usually this Soul Purpose conversation, Young come up with the idea and the topic, and he has one as usual. So maybe do you want to share your background story of why you decided what you want to talk about, or what's the actual topic? Usually it's difficult to pinpoint what it is because there's layers in this.
Yeah, it's a bit of a theme.
Yeah.
So I guess it's just around this concept of mirrors, or, you know, I'll tell it like a story in a way. So when I broke up with my girlfriend a couple of years ago, I was quite distraught about it. It wasn't the most terrible breakup, but it was, breakups are not nice. And there was elements of it that I struggled to reconcile, specifically around my own behavior, I guess. I felt like I stepped over a line ethically for myself in some way, not ethically, but integrity wise, or anyway, I lost my temper, and because I was of the belief up until that point that I was not going to lose my temper, which is unsustainable. It's not real but I did that, and things were said. And anyway, months afterwards, the thing that was standing out to me was this moment where we had this fight. And I was talking to a friend of mine about it, and he said how lovely, that we have these angels sometimes that come into our life and drop grenades, so that we can see, we can grow. And what I realized in that moment is that, like, we're all being at every moment, we're being exactly what we need in order for growth, or expansion is the language that I like. And when you're, very deep in the story of the wound, as we call it, which is this idea that life is happening to me, that all of the trauma, all of the, and just to drop the T's and C's, you don't have to believe what we believe. And we have many episodes on this concept of the story of the essence versus the story of the wound, if that interests you. but just to save time now, when I was in the story of the wound, this traumatic experience, this breakup, the country that I had to leave, all of these things, and I very much felt like life was happening to me, not for me, and that I couldn't wrap my head. I couldn't understand why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? Which is an interesting question. And then coming back to what the topic for today is, as my friend said, it's beautiful that this person came into your life, this angel came into your life to drop some grenades, because inevitably what happened was that I had to go inward and I had to start looking for answers, and some interesting stuff happened, and I found better language of that I'm not a physical creature seeking something, a relationship, a success, or whatever. And at that point, I was seeking a spiritual solution, but life was still happening to me. I was still a physical creature seeking a solution. But somewhere in that magic, and actually in one of your first workshops, I realized that I was a spiritual being having a physical experience, not a physical creature seeking a spiritual experience. And then suddenly the layers of that is that I moved from the story of the wound to the story of the essence. I moved from life is happening to me to life is happening for me. Like all my language changed. And then, a few months later after that, we're relational creatures, and so when you interact with people, you're co-creating, and there is something that's happening. But it's interesting how things change when I changed from it's happening to me to it's happening for me, and all of that internal language and everything that changed for me was when I changed. And just at that point, before the change, I was cynical. I was, I guess, angry in some ways. I was very worried about life. I was seeking things outside of myself to put inside this big hole within me. It was drugs, it was success, it was food, it was relationships, it was different countries, it was all of these things. I had a very bad inner critic. I was not a particularly happy person. I was quite nihilistic, and and all of that had to happen, I guess, for me to. I had to try everything, and now that I've changed, all the world has changed around me, but the people are exactly the same. They're the same people, but before I really struggled with people, right? Which I think is interesting, that if I'm the common denominator in my relationships, when I changed, the people have not changed. They haven't changed their behavior. They haven't changed who they are, but they're the same people, but my entire experience has changed.
So the important question, Jan, here that many people might be wondering, and I want to kind of explain a little bit from my point of view what you just said. What you just said is that you had a certain quality of life, in the assumption that you were operating from, living that life was happening to you. And especially you felt that way, and you came from that perception and assumption when something wasn't working for you. You had an immediate sort of feeling that why this is happening to me. That's actually the typical question that people ask when people are operating from the assumption that life is happening to you. They ask, why is this happening to me? Right? And then the quality of life has changed drastically. You said when you change, even though the external circumstance has not changed at all, and then the assumption is now life is happening for you. I also like the line of saying life is always happening through you, because
Mm.
we have the observer effect, right? The consciousness that we operate from becomes the cause of the molding, the creation in the outside. But at the same time, though, that the experience that we perceive, right? So I guess a simple question that people might be curious about hearing from you is,
Stop.
what did you change? What changed?
Yeah, I mean it's not tangible. It's so hard to describe.
I can describe it for you.
Okay, yeah, because I'll go. It'll take me a long time
So
to.
I think you already answered before I ask you the question, which is, many people are living under the assumption that they are physical beings and
Mm,
wanting to have a spiritual experience. So people think that they are physical creatures, and they are interested in the idea that they are or might be spiritual beings.
mm,
And the reason that I think that that's the answer, and that's the shift that you have been creating internally that enable you to create different experience in the exact same consequence, is because, first of all, when we understand that we're spiritual beings, we are outside of our thinking mind, right?
mm,
So the very first thing that we talk about is to the ability to observe our own thinking, because unless you have that observation, you're inside of your own thinking, and you start assuming that you are your thoughts. And it's interesting, if I say what I just said, everybody kind of lean into that. Doesn't mean that people are living with the awareness moment to moment, that as they think, even when somebody's watching right now or listening to right now, live replay, people have their thoughts because we are thinking all the time. And it's really important for all of us to understand that those thoughts that we are engaging and activating inside of us is not ourselves. So as emotion, so as belief, right? Then if somebody is not outside of those thoughts, it becomes reactive. Something happened in their life, and they immediately begin thinking that this something outside is making me think, feel anything, right? Because I think the rational mind, the egoic mind, the thinking mind wants to focus on the tangible, and that their reality becomes the world of the senses,
mm.
right? Their reality becomes the world of the senses. Their reality is not their internal experience. This is what I just said, is really important for a lot of people to understand. When somebody is inside of their thinking mind, for them, their reality is the world of the senses, what they can see, hear, smell, taste, touch.
Yeah.
But if you're outside of the thought, and then when we anchor the idea and begin embodying that we're a spiritual being, we can rest ourselves outside of the thoughts. But if we're not practicing aligning with that, the mind wants to grab our thoughts and then begin defining themselves as thoughts. So I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm whatever, right? So I feel something, I am something is an identification of that conception. And then now you're back inside of the thought bubble. Then that version of us that's driven by the mind, the reality for them is the outside world. So then once you're outside, step outside of the thought bubble, and then begin able to identify you more than the thoughts, more than the emotion, more than the belief that you're coming from, then now you have a breathing room. Now you have a space. Now you have an awareness to actually begin looking at reality as our inner experience. I'm not saying that the outside world doesn't exist, it does, but it's an effect of our inside experience if we really understand the universal law of cause and effect. So for me, when I hear you speak, so you say that something inside of you changed and you're a different person and you have a different way to maneuver through the same consequence, same circumstance, same people's behavior. Yeah. That's because you no longer identify you as the
Mm.
egoic mind, but you can observe it. That doesn't mean that that part of you, the survival part of us, can take over once in a while. But then now you have practice shift out of that quickly. Then you're not inside of the emotion, so it doesn't affect you. Then now you're in control. This is the positive usage of the word control over your how you want to direct internally, and now you are aligning with how life is supposed to be, which is life unfolds through us, because we have thoughts, we have an ability to take action, all of those. Well, when we really understand that we are a spiritual being, it for me that means that life is a process of expression, right? Life is moving all the time, life never stops, and then we are one, right? So then we're simply expressing, and through that expression we're experiencing, and then the effect in the outside is caused by our inside. Then that's it, right? You're now interpreting your life as, okay, life is happening through me, and
Yeah.
that's powerful.
Yeah, I mean, in its most simplest form, it's you see what you want to see.
Yeah.
Um, you might not know that you want it, but the yeah. So if everybody is being exactly what I need in order to grow or expand, I guess grow is more a story of the wound, and expand is more story of the essence. Then you know, as, everything that you were saying now, how does that? So if we move away from um, how like the early sort of how someone would begin to move from it's happening to me to it's happening for me, and let's say you're very much of the understanding that life is happening for you, all your relationships as mirrors essentially doesn't go away. It's just, I guess, the mirror is way more painful when you're in the wound, which is something that we can talk about at some point. But now that I'm not so much in the wound, the mirrors that I encounter are very expanding. And I thought we could talk about that, especially related to business and marketing and all the stuff that we love talking about.
Yeah. I mean, we have a lot of things that we can talk about. So I think I think what we want to focus on is, I cannot stress enough, Jan, how much I really want everybody, people in the world, to understand their assumption. And what I mean by that is that I guess the question is, what do we feel life is supposed to be, right? The supposed to be is what's going to happen outside, right? So then I'm not ignoring or denying different tragedy or some physical danger that happens in the world, right? But then life's supposed to be wonderful. Life's supposed to be a place that you can express yourself freely. Life is supposed to be, you are supposed to be living a happy life. You're supposed to be living a wonderful, joyful life. Are we supposed to be struggling, right? Those assumptions are embedded in our subconscious mind, and that mirrors for many people that struggle and challenge and difficulty or not feeling free. That sensation is embedded at the subconscious level, and that's the mirroring in the external circumstance, including relationship, including in business, including in health, right? So then the awareness that we want to obtain is to really understand the universal law, the process. Because I think if I can just say, everybody, Jan, the most important practice that I can instill in people is to begin cultivating the relationship with contrast. When something appears to be negative happens in our life, how do we relate to that
Mm-hmm.
is the most important practice, because that can immediately take you to a wound,
Mm.
right? But then, how do we choose a perspective to see this as the best thing? And
Yeah.
and how can we own the power that when we choose to see contrast in something that appears to be challenging, the best thing, because everything happens in life in rhythm.
Mhm.
And I was, we were talking about kind of coming up with this archives of practice. I was coming up with a practice called ready and go. Yeah. And
Mhm.
that practice consists of, when you make a decision and when you set an intention to do something to expand, you're going to run into some contrast and disruption in painful experience to be able to move through the process of creation. And many people don't understand this, that when you want to do something and when you decide to do something, including the business situation, right? You start, life start having different contrasts, and something goes wrong in their life. And what they choose to see that contrast is, oh, universe is telling me that I'm not ready. And then they start contracting, right?
Mm.
But the ready and go practice is that when you say that I am ready, and in order to jump, you need to dip first before you jump up and hop over to the other side, right?
Wow.
Yeah. You cannot jump and hop over to the other side without dipping down first, right? So ready and go means that you decide, you dip first, and you jump over. That's the that's the sequence and process of life expressing itself um, everywhere. And I think that's what we want to really master, right? Otherwise, when something or somebody appears and then it feels like it's blocking you, obstacle, then you start contracting. Then it's not going to be ready and go. It's going to be ready and later. And then you start turning away from the expansion. And I think if we can apply, all of us can apply that in the midst of when something is happening, it's going to be powerful.
So, do you mean that the dip is there by the nature of contrast? Like there has to be a dip in order for there to be an upward trajectory.
Yeah, another example that I give is that because every creation is a birth of the idea, right? So how does a baby gets born? The mother go through some painful situation to be able to show up and manifest. So
Mm.
pain, pleasure, good and bad, those are, the idea in the mind and the experience based on the relative realm, which is the space-time reality that we're living in. This relative, what Neil calls contextual field, because there is some degrees in experience, which we call positive, negative, empowering, disempowering, good, bad, uh, pain, pleasure, dark, and light. Those are relatives, right? In order for the relativity of the desire to be created, we must first experience through the opposite in order to actually express itself. And even the entire process of people going through some subconscious programming through our childhood and through that wound period is exactly the same. We must go through the wound in order to enter and express the essence through us.
You must know who you truly are not to become who you truly
Yeah,
are.
exactly. That's the equation of life unfolding itself. So
Yeah.
then, because the survival part of us wants to um, contract and resist against something that appears to be painful, we just want to understand that sequence, and then to let that survival mind win, right? To step back and to flow through that consequence. That's what we want to learn. I mean, in any situation, it doesn't need to be business, right? Yeah. I don't know if I answer your question and the exploration of the mirror.
Sorry, the puppies are very active today. Uh, yeah, it was interesting what you said, but I guess the original question was, what part does the co-creation, everybody interacting with everybody, because if it's a beautiful mechanism that, like, to it was wonderful for me to realize that this person that I was fighting with, breaking up with, essentially, in the moment it felt like this was happening to me, but afterwards I realized that it happened exactly as it needed to in order for me to figure some stuff out. So from the wound part, it's a wonderful mechanism, this mirror that I interacted with, that started to show me parts of myself and allowed me to go inward. But it's that mechanism is still there, even though I'm so far away from that it's happening to me sort of mindset. And so how can I guess, wield this in my favor, and I think, like, intuitively for me, it's the I've got to be careful with my words now. The type of people that I gravitate towards now, the type of people that I spend a lot of time sharing energy with, are all expanding. We're all expanding. We're all, growing in business, growing in our relationships, growing in all the ways. The co-creation, or the reflection between all of us, the mirroring. This, I don't have language for this. It's just, this is what I wanted to talk about. This interesting effect of, when I was in the wound, my wound was attracted to that person's wound, and it had to happen because we needed to be exactly what each other needed in order for us to. I haven't spoken to her, but I imagine that, or I hope at least, that we were exactly what each other needed in order to bloom, to grow, because that's what happened for me. And I got to trust that the same thing is happening for her, and that this is what happens, in these difficult situations. But that tool or mechanism, or like, whatever you want to call it, doesn't go away. I'm still interacting with people. I'm just not doing it from a wounded place anymore. I'm doing it from a more expansive place. And then even the people that I do encounter that are wounded, or that are not of the same beliefs as me, that interaction is completely different, you know. And it even comes back to, you know, we've spoken about this, but when you were saying, like, you know, you when you do your workshops and stuff, it's your soul that's doing the talking. It's not your ego, and I can vouch for that, because it's why I stayed. Basically, you said stuff that touched me, and and moving through life now, I feel that, because sometimes I talk to people, and they're not ready to hear, like, what I have to say, you know. And that's okay, because very shortly afterwards I'll be talking to people that very much understand what I'm saying, and then we just expand.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There are a lot of people who are not ready to hear, which result in triggering them or making them upset a little bit about it. You know, I think what you're talking about, there are two things that comes up in my mind as I hear you speak. One is we're all being guided. We are all being guided to expand, and the timing is different for all of us. Um, and then I think it comes to us in in in. I just want to use the term divine timing, but also what I'm hearing from you is, I think if we all can begin exercising the art of detachment, because if we get attached to how we have been living, that's where we continue to stay. Um, and it's interesting. I think you're starting to operate on the frequency of expansion. That's why that's what you see, and that's what you attract, and you start seeing the same consequence from a different lens, and that's what you're focusing on. And because you're focusing on that, that continues to expand and grow, and that is the mechanism of life. Yeah, you pay attention to something, and we get to nurture that, and that can go to either direction, negative or positive, resistance, contraction, expansion, and growth. So the as Florence Scovel Sin talks about, the game of life is simple, right? And I think what we want to really understand is, can we practice that, right? Can we practice that every moment instead of thinking about practicing it? Right?
Yeah,
Practice, yeah.
every moment for me is, because it's not, you know, it's not that I'm like now on some magical cloud and everything is just wonderful. It's but every moment is an opportunity for me to say, or ask myself, or check in with myself, is this feeding the story of the wound or the story of the essence?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then the more I do that, the easier it becomes. But there's constantly challenging moments, and I think that the beauty of that for me is that the challenging moments become this wonderful opportunity for me to deepen my whatever you want to call it, my practice, or my connection. Or this reminds me of an interesting story. So a friend of mine's friend, he owns an engineering company. I imagine that he's rather wealthy, but if you met him, you would never even think that, because he doesn't. That's not the identity that he carries. If you talk to him, he will talk to you about, he does end of life care, volunteers end of life care, helps people, move on, and he's very passionate about it. And when I asked him why he does it, he is part of his answer. I mean, it was quite. He spoke for a while, but part of his answer was that in everyday life he finds it hard to be to be reminded to be loving. It's almost like he drifts. But when he is in that situation, He is the best version of him. You know, I don't like this language of versions, but he is his best self. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's in his most loving self in this really difficult situation.
Mm.
And that was really wonderful for me, because I agree that when difficult stuff happens, it is very much an opportunity for me um, to see what it's feeding, and then how I'm going to behave.
Yeah. You know, what we are talking about for the entire time today is basically how to, or to highlight the lifestyle led by life is happening to me, to life is happening for and through me. And the shift happens when we begin living out of the story of the one, but to begin igniting the story of the essence. And I think what comes up for me is that it's basically a soul-led lifestyle. We are shifting the way of being where we're living from. And this I like to call practice is no different from physical practices. I was walking this morning and thinking of what we're doing is no different from practicing handstand.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot be practicing handstand once a month and
Mm-hmm.
to own that identity, right? So it needs to be consistent in, and then your body start learning how to stay there, how to walk,
Exactly.
right? So
Mm.
it needs to be a lifestyle and the way of being. And I like to sort of, connect the mental and spiritual, the invisible practice to the physical practice, because it's all the same. You wanna devote, and you wanna make as a priority first of all. And yeah, it's like a handstand, right? Mastering handstand is exactly the same as mastering creating a soul-led lifestyle and
Mhm.
a way of living. It's not, you cannot master handstand by watching a YouTube video once in a while, right?
Yeah,
There needs to be a dedication.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Is there anything?
Yeah, I mean, just to wrap it up, I mean, that's the a very long explanation to what I was saying, that, you know, the outside world as pieces, as whatever, didn't change. The people in my life didn't change. They're the same object, same person.
Hmm.
But most, if not all, of my relationships are wonderful now.
Mm,
You know, the people have not changed.
yeah, and you did, and everything
Yeah.
else changed.
You know, so and for the longest time in my life, I was always looking for uh, better everything, including better people, better job, better, you know, whatever. And now, yeah, it's just interesting for me, this, that it is the, you know, this, all this language around manifestation and stuff. People are shying away from it, or they um, but on the I really do believe that the outside is a reflection of the inside.
Yeah,
The actual, it's hard to say. It's like the actual place and people haven't changed. But when I changed internally, everything changed.
yeah,
And that's like the root, and beyond just my relationships, like everything changed
yeah,
in business, in, you know, it's all changing.
yeah. I think that's what Marianne Williamson says, right? Which I love quoting her. She says, in order to change the world, we must change the mind of the world, which you change your mind, your inside, and your world has changed because it's your world, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you, everybody. This was episode 11, and this was the first one going live instead of posting the recording. In You'll see some links below above. We are inviting everybody who wants to immerse in this spiritual hands-on practices. We have a Soul Purpose group, which is free, which we are expanding and enjoying all these conversations. Uh, Anybody who wants to dive deeper into really studying who we are, who you are, and begin creating a soul-led lifestyle, I want to invite you to that Soul Purpose School group. And we're going to be having a fun event topic on belief on the week of September 22nd. So that is it. Thank you, everybody. See you next week. We're going to be coming on here every week, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So see you very soon.